it is quite easy for people to call themselves belonging to this or that religion. Even practitioners to be, termed or calling themselves, identifying themselves as actual practitioners of a particular spiritual path, religious path. If you notice, I don't make distinctions between the two terms, religious and spiritual. Simple. What makes it simple? The demands placed upon the practitioners, the quote-unquote, the followers of that particular faith or path. The guidelines with which they need to function. And here's where we need to make, we don't need to make it, it just automatically reveals itself as being one of two, I would say, distinct paths, spiritual paths. Simple, easy to do, easy to follow. It doesn't require much commitment, basically. Much involvement, much dedication. Compared to an actually lived, practiced, facing many challenges type of a path that we are calling spiritual or religious. Majority of the religious paths out there that have a set criteria, as in rituals, rites, ceremonies. You do first this, and then that, and then this is how many times we do this during the day, during the week, during the month, at certain times, intervals during the year. That's what I mean by ritualistic. Series of ceremonies. This is how many times you're supposed to do this, and then that, and then this, and then that. So it's very observable. It's very, in many ways, tangible. It makes the tradition, the path, come alive for the person. Because they could see physical evidence of, in this case, evidence of others practicing it as well. So they don't feel alone or being the sole entity, the only person who's responsible, who's in a position of, well, they have to answer for their actions. Meaning you become part of the fold, the group. And that's what rituals allow, in essence. So it gives you a false sense of security. That's another thing, which has everything to do with the simple categorization which I made earlier. The simple aspect of it, the ease. Now, granted, on the outside it might seem like it's terrible, because in some religious traditions you have people who really go through physical hardship. Some have to do many, many prostrations a day, which is quite demanding. Others have to pierce their skin. They need to draw blood. They need to really torture the body. Others have to chant for hours on end. Others have to wear certain things, uncomfortable things, tie themselves up in this way or that, while they're chanting, while they're moving the body this way or that, swaying this way and that, and maintaining concentration. So this, to the observer, who does not engage in any such things, or whether they do or not, still, in many cases, will seem, will look, will be definitively something that is hard to do, difficult. Like penances and, going on a fast, not eating, torturing the body, ascetic practices, etc. Rituals, which give you a false sense of having accomplished something. I mean, yes, at the very least, it's going to give you, for the person, a sense of stronger willpower for having overcome difficulties. It's not easy for many people to say no to food when they go for the most part of the day without eating at certain times of the year, along with millions of other people, let's say. Or for 40 days during Lent, in the case of Christians, for example, when they're not used to doing such things. So it gives them a sense of coming out of their normal, superficial, if you will, materialistic world, to touch something that is of the other side of life, the supernatural even, in some cases. So rituals, prayers, vows, chanting, counting beads, which you have everywhere. You have in all traditions you have that, including in Buddhism. Now, this does not, I'm not making a distinction here between, I wouldn't want the listener to think that, oh, Buddhism is on one side and so they're immune to this kind of thing. No. Even though the Buddha scoffed at this path of torturing the body, these extremists, because he did it. He went all the way to the utmost levels of what a human body can handle, a human brain can handle. He went all the way to the end. And he says in the text that had he taken one extra step in that direction, he would have died. He reached that point. So he knew what physical torture was, for the sake of gaining some spiritual insights, understanding, depth of experience, etc. On the other hand, he also scoffed at living, in luxury and intoxications, the sense pleasures, which he knew everything about, being the crown prince and having 3 palaces for his own pleasure, for the 3 seasons of India, full of, harems and things like that, with all the 5, strands of sense pleasures could provide, all at his disposal. So he knew all that as well. So that was the other extreme. And he said, no, there's the middle path, which he showed. However, over time, which is inevitable for human beings, we turn it into a set of rituals, set, of guidelines, things to do. Initially, it might have been simply an innocent or even a beneficial tradition to maintain some level of, I wouldn't say necessarily camaraderie, but some structure. We have a structure such as the Vinaya in the case of the monks. But as a community, the Buddhists also had, let's say, the Uposatha, or the fortnightly, every 2 weeks, the gathering for the Bhikkhus, and also the new moon, full moon, where lay people also will take the 8 precepts, etc. So these are lovely, nice things, traditions. But what happens across the board throughout different religions, different cultures, different time periods in human history, people will get lazy and they will take the easy road. Easy, even in the case of somebody practicing, as in the case of a non-monastic, a layperson in Buddhism, with the 8 precepts that they abstain on top of the 5. Not eating after noon, or after the noon meal, etc. And not using a bed, for example. For many people that's hard, difficult. And they do. And then they come out and it feels like, yes, I am practicing the path. That's not it. If it stays there, it's a helpful tool. Rites and rituals are simply can be helpful, but they are never what they have been made to be. They're not those things. They do not give you the taste of this supernatural, if that's what we're going to call it. It gives you a nice feeling that, you look over to your left side, the right side, in front, behind you, and you see maybe a few, maybe hundreds of millions of people doing the same thing. Bowing, prostrations, and this and that. Making the cross with the, left side or the right side. Oh, you feel cozy, you feel good about that. Or somebody's counting their beads and bowing to this house of worship like you, or not that one, like you. So what we're looking at is a social coherence, where you feel you're not alone. Do you see how this has nothing to do with the spiritual path? This has to do with social conveniences. People who are like-minded, people who do and say and speak and behave and act, think, speak just like you. And you can feel all fuzzy inside, emotional, even cry. But then again, you see this even in concerts, rock concerts and other things. You see this in political events. When you have one candidate and you look around and you have all these people, everybody's smiling and waving their flags or their pictures of this person. And they say a few words and say it in an emotional way. All of a sudden you have tens of thousands of people crying even. It can be seen as a religious experience. But it does not make it so. It doesn't turn it into a supernatural. What spiritual path is all about. Removing you from the mundane to the supramundane. For this reason, many people today, unfortunately, are taking the easy road, easy path, the path of rituals. That's why I've been a staunch critic of rites and rituals. In Buddhism, we have our share of that. And I've been a strong advocate in many arenas, many places I've been invited in different parts of the world, where I see that to be the case. And people don't like that, ultimately, because people feel comfortable doing just that. And when you encourage them to practice dana, sila, bhavana, meditation, sila meaning virtue or the practice of morality, having standards for their lives, they might say, yeah, I'll do some dana, which is the generosity part. Yeah, I'll go on a retreat. I'll go and do because it's the hip thing, right? It's the in thing, as they say. For 3 days or 10 days, or, I'll do a silent retreat and then I'll talk about it for, forever. That I completed it. So it's a matter of willpower. Again, we're fallen back into the rites and rituals path, which is what even meditation has been turned into. However, when it comes to sila, when no one sees you abstaining from doing something that you shouldn't be doing, when you're all alone, no one's there to watch you, then it means that you have to be your own adult, your own mature person, your own responsible person who's doing this for yourself, for your own good, for your own future, for your own spiritual development. And that is hard. That is difficult, where there's no one to see you doing it, especially if it's internal, when you are keeping tabs on what the mind is doing. How are you going to go and put that on Instagram, on Facebook? How are you going to advertise that? By the way, I had 10 nasty thoughts today, and 3 of them got away, but the 7 I was able to, clench and really beat down, and then I was able to get insights about that, this and that. Maybe you might be able to pull this off a few times and have a blog and mention it on your platforms and things. Eventually people get tired. And you get tired. Because it's not that attractive. It's not that bombastic as, well, I did a 3-month retreat. I went to, I don't know, somewhere, in the world, exotic place. A teacher came in and I did this, and you see all that colorful bells and whistles are parts of keeping the ritual tune, song going. And for this reason, today's human being is not really interested in upholding, taking up, and practicing virtue. And that is usually the first sign that a society is becoming bankrupt or has already become bankrupt, when they abstain from practicing virtue for the sake of one's own feeling of purification. You do this for yourself. Now, of course, I'm hoping every religious path out there has within it individuals who hold themselves to such high standards of virtue, despite, what their, specific denominations would dictate. Because when you're practicing virtue, you go beyond the confines of your own small religious ideals or ideologies. If you're practicing it correctly, then you tap into something much bigger, universal values of love, where you don't see the walls between people, between you and someone else. You see love towards an enemy pouring out from your heart towards them. When an enemy comes and you find yourself in a position where the enemy, the head of the enemy, the main figure, let's say, of your worst enemy, is placed right there. They are trusting you enough to rest and lay their head on your lap, on your legs, and to just get a shut-eye, to just rest and sleep a little bit. And you have a knife next to you. And no one can see you. No one can affect your judgment. You have the power, you have the control to do whatever you will, whatever you want. You're the powerful person there, and your enemy is right there. What do you do? Especially if this person has killed your own family, killed your own people, killed everything that you held valuable. But here they are in your lap, resting, closing their eyes, trustingly, giving their life to you, in a sense, to safeguard. Do you slit their throat? Do you kill them? Or do you continue pouring love to them? True spiritual practice will do the latter. It will not see an enemy. It will not think about, well, what if my buddies, my family, my people see me having, quote unquote, wasted such a grand opportunity to get even. True spiritual path does not hold such a vengeance. Has nothing to do with spirituality, with true religious values, because that, what I said earlier, it goes far beyond the social, ethnic, racial, if you will, specific groups outline. That's not where true religion abides, dwells. If it is true religious path, it is universal in its values. It's people who take these positions, the people who, especially political movements and people who have ulterior motives to move people this way or that, bring up anger, bring up aggression in people. But if you go back to the basics of religion, true spiritual practice, you see universal values there, starting with virtue, not rites and rituals. When a society is going down the tubes, as they say, it starts to lean towards rites and rituals because it's easy. Incantations, special ceremonies, rites, sacrifices, this and that. Nothing to do with the true spiritual path. That moment when you are in a powerful position to do something that you know it's against your higher standards, higher universal values, where you have to stand up for the truth and what is just, what is true, what is compassionate, what is kind, what is based on love. But it would be a difficult choice for you to do because a lot is riding on it. You nevertheless will say, I will not cave into this. I will not give in. I will not give up virtue for the sake of gaining this. Resources, wealth, money, recognition, power. People coming and patting you on the back and saying, bravo, you're one of us now. Now we know you're real, you're proven yourself. You're proven your worth. You're part of us, one of us. Being accepted, all that. You put all that into the trash can for the sake of saving that person. This requires a tremendous capacity within the person to really, truly live the spiritual path. That's why you have only few people on the planet who could really live it. Majority of the population will go through the, routine of doing this and doing that. Did I bow enough times, or did I do this, or did I do that enough? Did I make, rites and ritual nonsense, ultimately. Did I chant this the right amount of times? Rites and rituals have their own social place, but nothing more. True spiritual practice requires guts, requires authenticity, requires courage, But that, then again, most books that are written on, these days, self-improvement, or in the case of Buddhism, or anybody writing on meditation, and especially the hot topic, or, the area that many people keep making a lot of money on, mindfulness, be here now, all that nonsense. There's no commitment. It's very easy. Be here now. Be mindful. Come on. How hard is that? But the author is selling a book. The presenter is selling tickets, sold out auditoriums. Everybody goes home happy. The reader feels great because they feel that, yeah, according to the book, I'm good. The writer feels, yeah, look at them, they're happy they came, and look at them, they're counting the cash. Or becoming famous and things like that. It has nothing to do with the spiritual path on either case, either front. And there is sadness there, however, because both of them have lost a tremendous opportunity to make use of this life. That's why many people don't like it when I mention, and others, few, I'm talking about Buddhist teachers out there, very few in fact, who make it a point to highlight the value of sila through and through. That's what's going to allow the practice to grow. But that's not going to get you the big crowds. Unfortunately, I guarantee it, given my experience. Because it's not attractive in this world, in this time period. Everybody's seeking gratification, and that particular term, gratification, is one of the things that Lord Buddha warns us against. So how could we just sit here and say, yeah, we have to have gratification here and we have to live as a good practitioner? They don't go together. Something's got to give. And that explains the world situation. Rites and rituals will not take us to, call it salvation, cessation of suffering. Personal practice will. Dedication to that, not the rites and rituals. Because those are easy. When no one's looking, and you follow your heart and you do what needs to be done because of not what somebody has told you, but because of what is dwelling in your heart. The purity of universal values, where no matter what color your skin is, no matter which part of the world, universe you're born into, whichever lifetime, you would appreciate this action that you're about to do. There will not be any regrets for having done that. That's what I mean by universal value, because the recipient of this act of yours will be happy. Their loved ones will be happy that you existed, you were there, you encountered them at that junction in their lives. You were a gift to that person, to the whole of humanity. That's why we practice sila. We don't practice sila for the sake of practicing rites and rituals. Unfortunately, millions of Buddhists don't understand this still. Billions of people don't understand this, unfortunately, still. Because this world is functioning upon greed. This is nothing new, because it was happening even at the time of the Buddha. That's why many people turned the Buddha into a god into this other than human, something that is beyond, someone who is beyond. They built a heaven for him and things like that, just to push him further and further so that the rituals could be more and more. Nothing to do with the middle path. And the middle path is middle. You know why? Because only one person can walk that tightrope. That one person is you. No one can walk it for you. But others can taste the fruits that you're tasting, given your behavior, your personality changes that are taking place in you, transforming you. So for that purpose, in that context, from this angle, if and when we look at the spiritual path, we refuse walking the easy path, in that sense. And we choose the virtuous path, despite the fact that the mind will come in and say, no, I'm not going to practice abstaining, restraining myself, restraining my baser tendencies. I'm not going to slit the throat of my enemy, however evil they might be. I'm not going to lie and cheat to get even. I'm not going to justify this action by what the enemy has done to me, my ancestors, all that. That's how I would approach this.